Hey, welcome, I'm Bomb from KTG. Today I've brought you an A-10 gameplay video, the Thunderbolt. It's one of the most powerful attackers in Metalstorm. So I actually titled this video, Advanced Gameplay. There are plenty of players better than me, so I won't go as far as calling it expert level. The main reason I make videos like this is that a lot of beginners want to level up to intermediate or advanced play, but they're not sure what they should be focusing on to actually improve. My goal with these videos is to scratch that itch, and today I want to talk about combat positioning. You can call it positioning, setup, or whatever, but think about StarCraft. When pro players build up their army and go for a big team fight, they don't just blindly send their units in. They push forward, pull back, and maneuver to minimize friendly losses and get into the best possible position before engaging. Metalstorm is exactly the same. The most typical examples are avoiding head-ons, getting on the enemy's tail. Using terrain for cover, all of this is about minimizing damage to your jet while attacking as efficiently as possible. I'm calling all of this combat positioning. Let's look at some actual match footage to break it down. The first match takes place on Icebound in-team deathmatch. The blue circle moving around is my AE tracking indicator showing where I'm looking. It shows where I'm focusing during the game, so pay attention to that too. Our team is a squad of 5 from KTG, and the opposing team has 4 players from SG Top Gun Squad plus Saya from CBL. They're running 1 upgrade tier. We're running stock, no upgrades. Our team has 2 interceptors, 2 attackers, and 1 M3. Their side has a Jaguar, some heavy fighters, and several medium fighters. Stock versus 1 upgrade tier. We're at a slight disadvantage, but let's do our best. Now, the most fundamental thing when it comes to match positioning and combat positioning is fighting together with your teammates. Sure, you might be able to pull it off, but solo charging into enemy territory and going wild, there's no hero when you're getting swarmed. Even if you're flying an attacker, it's critically important to stay in a position where your teammates can back you up and to engage together. It's easy to forget this mid-game, so you need to keep reminding yourself. Not just tracking where enemies are, you need to constantly check the minimap and make sure your teammates are staying close to you at all times. That's the most important thing to focus on. It reduces mistakes, and even when you do make one, your teammates can bail you out. That's one of the most efficient ways to rack up kills while keeping your deaths down. Let me say that again as a reminder. Right now, we're fighting on our side of the map the whole time. We're at a jet level disadvantage. But we're winning the engagement. I'm guessing their team is being more aggressive because their jets are stronger. But that's not always a good thing. Second point, practice fighting with terrain on your side at all times, even as an attacker. You need to avoid situations where you're out in the open with enemies coming at you from all 360 degrees. If missiles can come flying at you from any direction, you're going to get shot down fast. When you have a wall on one side, you only have to worry about the other direction. So always keep in mind that fighting out in wide open space is a huge burden. See how I'm still hugging the wall right now? When you fight along a wall, it acts like cover. The enemy can have a hard time pinpointing your location. You can see 3 enemies ahead. I'm sneaking into position in that area, and then suddenly they light up bright, right? You may or may not know the difference between enemies appearing dim and appearing bright. When an enemy appears dim, it means they haven't spotted you yet. When they go bright, it means they've detected your position. So if an enemy is hiding behind terrain and appearing dim, that tells you they haven't seen me yet, and you can use that to sneak up and ambush them. That's one of the most important pieces of information you can use, especially in fights between experienced players. Whether or not the opponent has spotted you makes a huge difference in who wins the engagement. So pay close attention to this. Right now you can see these 2 haven't spotted me yet, they're still appearing dim. The A4 and F5 just spotted me. I'm hiding behind this wall and keeping an eye on F5's position. See how my gaze is focused on the mini-map? Got behind F5. And continuing like this. Third point, instead of head-ons, try to get on the enemy's tail. Reckless engagements cause a lot of unnecessary damage. In this case, I ended up in a head-on with the Jaguar, but it looks like the Jaguar got distracted by something else. Right now, it's a 3-on-1 situation and things look rough. Use the terrain tovade. When you're fighting with terrain on your side, even a 3-on-1 isn't automatically a losing situation. Watch where those two enemies in the back are moving. I can see a MiG-23 and Su-47 behind them. There are enemies over there. I'm fighting with the wall at my back while tracking where those two are. Those two are pushing into enemy territory. I'm not chasing them recklessly. In open space, a 1v3 is almost always a losing fight, but when you've got a wall at your back, you can overcome that numerical disadvantage. The JA-37 is moving away, but I can see more enemies coming from behind, so I'm letting it go. Looks like the GR3 player isn't particularly skilled. I've got a plan for this one. I can see JA-37 coming from behind, so I popped preemptive flares in advance, and I dodged the missile cleanly. Keep watching the minimap. The next key point is always using the minimap actively. What I mean by watching the minimap is not just checking where enemies are and where your teammates are, but also looking at the direction the enemy's nose is pointing. That's really important. For example, if there's an enemy behind you but their nose is pointing away from you, that's reassuring they're not chasing you. But if their nose is pointing right at you, then you may need to start actively evading. In that case, you may need to kick into active evasive maneuvering. And that wraps up the first match. Let's move on to the second one. The second match is also on Icebound running stock no upgrades. Our team lineup is the same as the first match. The enemy team has 4 players from Skewoi Squad and 1 Japanese player. Their loadout is 2x A4, 1x F4, 1x Draken, 1x F1. The F4 and the A4 both have gotten significantly stronger since the recent patch. Going head-on against them is now a pretty risky move. As a reminder, once again, always group up with your teammates to fight. Let me stress this one more time. I can't stress this enough. See, one enemy jet is crossing into our territory that's a gift. Looks like the interceptor drew their attention. The Japanese player on F1. Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch. Pushing all the way into enemy territory like that, even if you take down the interceptor, you're just going to die afterward. It's basically trading kills. But think about it, avoiding 1 death is far more valuable to your team than getting 1 kill. Your goal should be to take as little damage as possible while creating opportunities to shoot down enemy jets. When you first start out, you're frustrated that you can't get any kills. Then as you improve a bit, the kill count starts climbing. But then you notice your kills and deaths are about even. That's roughly the mid-tier, early intermediate level. And then you start wondering, how do I cut down on deaths? That's the key turning point where you cross into upper intermediate play. So instead of focusing on stacking kills, start asking yourself, how do I die less? Focusing on that question is really what drives improvement. And everything I've told you, group up with your teammates, use terrain for cover, understand that all of it is basically a method for reducing deaths. See, I'm always watching the minimap up front. You can see an A4 crossing over this way and an F1 coming toward us here. Continuously tracking enemy positions and directions, deciding which angle to enter the fight from. You need to keep confirming this by watching the minimap. Just looking at the main screen ahead makes it hard to judge the right moment to enter a fight. See, the A4 just turned, right? so I get on its tail and move in. This is exactly how you use the minimap reading where enemies are and which direction their nose is pointing to decide whether to push into the central battlefield or pull back. That's how you make those decisions. So as I always say, enemy positions and nose direction on the minimap. You can see they keep moving from this side to that side. In this case, they're still pushing this way, but this area hasn't been scouted. So I'm backing off instead of pushing in. Charging in blindly here could be dangerous. Now watch this. Look at all those enemies packed in there like a lion's den. If I'd gone into the central battlefield earlier without scouting it, there's every high chance I would have died. Entering the central battlefield isn't something you do blindly. You go in when the area is well scouted. When teammates are going in together or when it's confirmed safe. Playing defensively in our own territory right now doesn't mean never push out. It means push when the timing is right and the situation allows it. Just a moment ago when I entered the central battlefield, I was only focused on the A4 in front and missed the enemy on the side that's waddled to the overextension. That ended up being a bit of reckless play. Just to recap that the score is in our favor now, but don't get complacent. Keep trying to reduce deaths and take favorable positioning right to the end. The Draken is heading this way, coming from the central battlefield. And I can see 2 A4s ahead. They turned, moving in. This is the final fight now. F1 up front was a bit of a concern. But those 2 jets below never confirmed my position on the minimap and turned their noses away, so I committed and went for it. And that's the match. It's over. So to wrap up, when you're in combat, you'll get used to playing while staring at the main screen. But you really need to build the habit of constantly checking the minimap, even mid-fight. Train yourself to continuously sync your movement with what the minimap is telling you about enemy positions in real time. When you're focused on the fight or feeling the pressure, it's easy to lose track of the minimap. Even if you're just playing against bots at first, keep practicing. In fact, try playing while looking at the minimap as much as possible without watching the main screen. As long as you're not flying into terrain, just navigate by minimap alone. Once that becomes natural, even in the heat of intense combat against enemies, it'll kick in as a habit and actually help your gameplay. So today we went through 2 A-10 gameplay matches. Hope it was helpful. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I'm bombYG from